that stimulus?
Probably not in the same way at all. It's true. So is that a bad sign as far as like our art market, having people who aren't artists be interested in art?
It does seem like an awful lot of the audience of comics is people who want to draw comics themselves.
Well, but it's hard to tell because a lot of our friends are cartoonists. Often, I mean, every so often, like at a con or something, I meet someone and they're like, "I really like your comic," and I'm like, "Cool, what comic do you draw?" And they're like, "I don't draw comics." I'm like, "What? You just read comics?
What's wrong with you?
You can't just read them, you have to read them and create them." I don't know if that answers your question.
That's what we were talking about.
No, extending from that kind of learning the language of comics from a young age, among some of your peers, the techniques that you use to tell the story in the book are sometimes referred to as formalists. That's a big buzzword that's being tossed around in comics criticism right now.
What's it mean?
I was hoping you could tell me.
Oh, nuts.
Did you set out doing this book? Because it's got a very interesting visual style. Did you set out with any type of storytelling philosophy? Are you trying to impart some sort of critical theory onto your readers?
Well, I guess there's a couple different aspects to that. One is that the initial idea was that I wanted to write a comic about science and young inventors, and then it quickly became obvious. I hope this doesn't break any hearts. That I don't actually know anything about science, and that making the book like have a scientific feel to it was incredibly difficult because I kept being like, and then here's where they have this awesome invention, which I have to invent.
Invention to follow.
Yeah, invention to follow. Basically, I had a whole lot of like invention TBA, like kind of like footnotes in my notes. It was a little
That's what
awkward.
I was thinking about. I was like, oh man, Eleanor has to like invent a bunch of stuff now.
Yeah, it was scary.
But that's not my job.
Yeah, and honestly, like stuff like Ben invents some spring-loaded super boots, which, I mean, that's a pretty lame invention.
Well, yeah.
It's not a complex invention.
It's not a complex. It's an
But
invention that like everybody invents when they're about 6, which I think adds to the book in some ways.
Well, that was part of the goal, right? Like,
Right.
The inventions were supposed to. They weren't going to invent like.
I mean, I feel like
something that would change their shape or something like that.
Right. They had to
You're
be
gonna
pretty
be
believable.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be Jules
relatably
Verne.
intelligent.
well, and not only that, I feel like in our we specifically set out to when we were brainstorming, we would be like, okay, when you were 12, 10, however old, surely you drew like invention plans yourself. Try and get back into that mindset of what you think would be the most awesome thing you could possibly have that nobody has made and you've owned yet. When you're that age.
Yeah, so I mean, it was definitely deliberate in that I wanted kids to come away after reading the book thinking I could have invented that. I've thought of the idea of spring-loaded super boots. Therefore, I could be friends with Julian and Greta and Ben. But also, I am not the most scientifically minded person, so I think that a lot of the stuff that we do with the more formal aspects of the storytelling was kind of an attempt to make it kind of get the excitement and the feel of a scientific story. Kind of that we have a lot of diagrams and co-reviews and stuff.
You're stepping on my next question.
Oh,
No, it's exactly what I meant to bring up. Is it has the veneer of science, that kind of very rigorous study of everything. What they're having for lunch, and the diagram of the town, like an overhead view, and where everything is in relationship with everything else. I think you've always had a lot of little details, close-ups, and labels in your work. Where does that come from?
Well, I think that one of the things about it is I think that a lot of comics suffers from people kind of thinking of it as still TV or still movies. If you broke down a movie shot by shot, and then put it onto a comics page, it would be pretty much the same thing. And the neat thing about comics is, I mean, they're just a completely different medium that does stuff that no other medium can do. And one of the things that it can do is explore the whole page and allow the reader to become involved with the page in a more intimate level, I think, and look really closely at detailed images and go back to, you know, recheck things or re-explore different themes. So that was part of my goal. And also just when I was little, I really loved detailed stuff. I felt like it was really giving me like value for money, kind of, you know.
Well, we were talking earlier about Michele and I actually just earlier today about how kids do like complex stuff and they like memorizing like 100 Pokemon and stuff like that.
Exactly.
And and it probably has something to do with that's the time when your brain's growing the most. You like to be able to pore over a lot of things, and all the stuff that I know the most trivia about is probably the stuff that I was into, 6th through 10th grade or something.
Right.
Like that.
Can you reread that stuff? Like, I think we were commiserating lately about how I feel like I forgot most of the stuff I was taught in junior and high school, but I could probably quote from memory most of the first volume of Ronma 1/2. I read that so often. But also, one of the most important things is that in doing the amount of detail is that I really wanted to challenge my colorists.
Anybody who's reading that book, I think you know what those complex pages look like. I need to look at them again, like 8 more times.
Stare at every single image.
There was, when we were working on it, during the majority of the time, we were not actually, Michele and I weren't living in Athens, so a lot of our, as friends communication was going on through these, emails, sending pages and stuff like that. And so,
a lot of the time we'd put, tiny details and tiny jokes in, and think to ourselves, nobody is